All right, welcome to this edition of the Balanced CEO podcast. We're here for part 2 with Derek Batman, who's the CEO of Hardbat Athletics and Lucid Marketing. So I want to talk more about, you have a very specific non-negotiable in your life, and that's your fitness. But I want to remind people that your non-negotiable is also being worked around a wife who is the mother of 2 kids, 2 daughters under 2.
Yeah.
And also while managing the fact that her husband has 2 companies that he's the CEO of.
Yep.
And you're still squeezing in non-negotiable fitness 5-6 days a week. So tell me more about how you do that while also be supporting your wife, who, I mean, we all know, moms need breaks.
Yep.
So how are you supporting that, making sure she's getting the time that she needs, and also that your daughters are getting on FaceTime with their dad, especially at an age where they basically are non-self-sufficient whatsoever?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to couch this whole conversation in the fact that I'm a strong believer that there's seasons to life, and that you need to look at your schedule and your workflow and your businesses as having seasonality. And alongside of that comes some grace. And as it relates to fitness and it being a non-negotiable, I think for me, it's just like believing that and learning that the minimum effective dose is okay. And that you don't always need to be in a cut, or you don't always need to be building muscle, or you don't always need to be improving some specific performance markers. And sometimes it's just a matter of sweating and getting your heart rate up and doing some strength work because it makes you a better version of yourself. So, you know, I think it can be easy or the trouble can be that people that aren't currently working out could hear that and think to themselves like, well, how in the heck am I going to manage that with all the other things I have going on, right? And I think I just want to be really clear as to the fact that what that looks like day to day, week to week, month to month, season to season can look very different for me. It's never not on my calendar.
I love that. So tell me, so when you say minimum effective dosage, for someone that maybe doesn't understand what that means, it varies person to person.
Sure.
Right? Because like you said, minimum effective dosage is, I just want to maintain what I have, or at least maintain as much of the capacity that I have as possible. I'm not really looking to improve it. I'm not looking to lose weight. I'm not looking to gain weight. Just looking to kind of hang around and enjoy this homeostasis level that I've built. But what is a minimum effective dosage? How would someone figure that out?
Well, I think it's important to say first that like my North Star is being able to be an active dad the rest of my life. Right. So because of that, if you kind of like backcast that, and you're looking at, well, how can I have a minimum effective dose, or what should that be for my daily living? Taking all of those other things into account that we talked about in terms of circumstance and seasonality. How can that, over the long term, right, being fitness, being an infinite game, how can that positively contribute every single day towards the goal of being a fit and active dad the rest of my life? And for me, that generally falls into a couple camps, right? One, it's maintaining, if we want to get tactical, it's like maintaining the muscle mass that I have, which, current science tells us that it's about 5 hard sets per muscle group per week. And when you do the math, like you could get away with 30 minutes in the gym 4 days a week and pull that off, right? Just from a strength perspective, right? It's in maintaining my cardiovascular fitness, both for the sake of my own longevity, because you can't be a fit and active dad if you're dead, and also because I know that I'm a better person, I'm a better leader, I'm a better parent, I'm a better husband when I get my heart rate up, I sweat, right, and my cardiovascular fitness is where it needs to be.
And I love that because I really picked up on that. Jason Kleep actually taught me that. He said, when in doubt, 5x5. One day 5x5 back squat, one day 5x5 bench press, one day 5x5 deadlift. He's like, as long as you're making sure your weights are linear and going up every week, he's like, you always make sure your strength doesn't.
I think there's like a rule in the strength world that I've heard that's like 3 to 5 sets at 3 to 5 reps with 3 to 5 minute rest, 3 to 5 days a week.
Yep. And I've used that in times of real desperate, you don't got time. I got my garage gym. I go out there and I get my 5x5 and I am done. I'm moving on.
For sure.
And I'm happy.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like, in this phase of my life, having a daughter that's now only 3 weeks old, like, I'm very much just in maintenance mode. Now, there are days where, given the fact that, I was able to sleep a little bit more, or maybe, I have a little bit more time on my schedule, like, I will pour in and have a 2-hour training session just to kind of like scratch that itch. But most days it's 45 minutes. And there will be times in my life, sooner rather than later, I will have a very specific performance-based thing that I'm trying to move the needle on, just because I find that to be fun. But I don't think, you can gamify fitness in however you want. I think that it doesn't need to be performance or aesthetics-based.
I agree. I've got the half marathon. You saw me out there earlier this afternoon getting my run in. So that's my thing that I do consistently because I have a goal.
Yeah.
And my strength right now is just, I'm trying to, if I can get my strength higher, awesome. But if I don't have time, like yesterday, didn't have time before my flight, so I got a 5x5, got a pump, felt good, didn't have to worry about working out anymore that day.
Yeah.
Today, got my run in. If I have time, I'll get a pump later, another 5x5, probably dumbbell bench or something like that. Good, don't have to worry about it the rest of the day. So for people that are traveling or just really tight on work, or maybe you're new into a business and you're working 12, 14-hour days, like something as simple as a quick warm-up and a 5x5 is better, absolutely better than coming home, eating a shit meal, hopping on the couch for an hour to decompress and going to bed.
Yeah, I mean, like, developing the flexibility around your workout schedule is a skill that you have to develop. Coming from a performance background for so long, where I was trying to, break certain snatch records or clean and jerk records for myself, like, and training 3 to 4 hours a day, being able to go from that to where I am now has been, there's been a lot of learning and challenge and failure and discomfort along the way. But I think it's really important to be flexible with yourself and not pour the shame on when you're like, I was supposed to work out for 90 minutes and then like all this stuff kind of got in the way and now I only have 15. It's like, cool, go do 15 minutes, right? So it's being okay. And not only being okay, it's being proud of yourself and like being able to like reflect back on that and be like, I did the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think and two, for someone that's newer, it's that 15 minutes just developed consistency. Yep. It added another notch in your belt towards creating a consistent habit. And, you didn't get in 60 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever your plan was, but you got something in, which means you get to check that box and move on to the next day knowing that you can check the box.
Yep.
And I use the Streaks app for that. The Streaks app has been crucial in helping me develop habits and consistent approaches to fitness and reading and other things I need to do. And I think, like you said, 15 minutes, man, just do 15 minutes. Like, don't quit. Don't just ignore it because, it's all gone to hell now. No, 15 minutes is still a day of doing something.
Yeah, and I think there's a really important point to make here, which is that this stuff can pound. So, for instance, like, I've been working out pretty consistently for the past 2+ decades, right? So at this stage, I can do a lot in 15 minutes because my body is prepared to be able to go right into a workout. I can do more complex things. I can move heavier loads. I can push myself harder. So I think you earn the ability to be able to get in great workouts in very short bouts of time.
I like that. That's important. I think that's really important. So speaking of that, let's segue into this. So, talk about two companies. We talked about Hardbat in part 1. Let's talk about Lucid in part 2. You and I have had extensive conversations about marketing and the importance of this. And for gym owners and business owners in general, I really want you guys to pay attention to this part. I think we're in agreement that getting leads is great,
yep.
Right? Getting customers, getting leads that you can turn into customers is awesome. But there's a massive gap between obtaining a lead and nurturing them to a sale.
Yeah.
And that's the gap that Lucid is really trying to more or less fill.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think first it's worth mentioning there is still a very unfortunate amount of businesses that aren't even doing the lead gen part. That's right? Where like they're not telling enough people that they exist, right? So I wish that wasn't as big of a problem as it is for business owners, but more specifically, gym owners. But it's not uncommon for me to have a consult with a gym owner where I'm like, hey, how many leads are you getting on a monthly basis? And they're like 13. I'm like, okay, like with that needs to go way up, right? So I think it's just first the acknowledgement of, if people don't know about your stuff, they can't pay for it, right? They can't become members. You can't change their life. So I think that's kind of the first hurdle that's worth getting over. But what I found through doing a bunch of lead gen for 40 plus gyms at this point is that where the elbow grease really comes in is in getting very granular and detailed with the metrics once the leads come into your system, all the way through the point of the sale, and then being it's funny, I'm going to say unemotional, but learning how to be unemotional about your decision making around the constraints that you find because of this increase in lead flow. So one of the things I tell gym owners, I'm very transparent about this, is like injecting a bunch of leads into a business that hasn't had many leads is going to cause more problems than it's going to fix right out of the gate, right? And the reason for that is because it's kind of like, if you have something wrong with your knee, but all you do is walk around, you're not going to notice it, right? Or you very slightly.
You get used
but
to
if I tell you to put 135 pounds on your back and just squat until you fail, you're going to feel it terribly, right? And I think that there's a similar effect that takes place when you start injecting a bunch of leads into a business that maybe hasn't ever fully operationalized their lead nurture, fully operationalized their sales process, and now they're exposed, their problems are exposed to the nth degree, right? But I think there's opportunity in that. So as long as you can be unemotional and remain objective and be willing to figure out where you need to make improvements in your business, I think that it's only upside.
Yeah, I agree. I think with most businesses, we get to a point where we want to grow, but we haven't scaled to take on the growth. And so you're essentially pushing a ship out to water that hasn't even been tested if it can float.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's okay, well, it can float. Let's put a whole crew on there. Well, that boat might only be able to hold 2 people, not the full crew of 20.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. You haven't stress tested your systems. So you have to focus on systemizing, then scaling. Your systems have to be able to handle the scale.
For sure. And like another question I ask through our consult process is, do you have a team that would be able to support you, be it in nurture, right? In the case that we're not taking it over for them, it's a second conversation. But more importantly, in sales, right? Like basically, what is your total availability that you have in your NSI, no sweat intro, which is what we refer to as consultations in this gym biz. What is your availability like, both in absolute terms, but also during prime hours? And that alone can give me a picture of, this is the right or wrong thing for you right now.
Yeah. I think it's, what you're doing is really important and really necessary, not only in the gym industry, but I think in most industries, is understanding that, yes, you can have somebody that will tell you, I can get you 1,000 leads. What do you do with them?
Well, so I want to talk to the numbers a little bit, because this is really important. We just, I do a whiteboard meeting with my the leadership team internally with Lucid every 2 weeks. And we boiled down a ton of metrics just the other day, and actually just yesterday. And we were specifically looking at okay, out of all of the clients we work with, what is the level of predictability around if they get X lead, or if they get X leads, what is their set rate on average going to be? What is their show rate on average going to be? What is their conversion on average going to be? And then being able to reverse engineer the amount of people that it would take in order for them to see a positive ROI, a multiple of what they're spending in service fees and in ad spend. And it's interesting because there's a couple lessons that really came out of it, right? One was, so for us, our expectations are set like this. So for every 100 leads that we can get a client, we set about 25 appointments. Out of those 25 appointments, about 12 of them show, and out of 12, they're signing up somewhere between 6 and 8, right? So with that, if you can look at what the front end revenue or front end offer is, or average front end offer, and I think one of the best ways to do this is, rather than just say, well, we kind of sell this one the most, it's like, take the last 3 months, and if you want to get really granular, or have a little bit, I should say, a bigger kind of 30,000 foot view picture, you can take a year and look at all of the front end revenue divided by the amount of people that came through the door, and then you can like plug that number in as like, this is our average that we acquire when a new member signs up. And with that, you can figure out, well, how much would I need to spend to yield a 3x return? And as long as you're hitting those targets, it's a machine that is predictable and consistent, and you can keep pressing the button, right? And I think what's scary is that when you first do go through the lead generation phase and you're like, here's 100 leads, it doesn't all just fall into place like that, right? Like, that was the average, and we have people that perform better than that, and we have people that perform worse than that. And whether they perform better or worse is predicated on their ability to do the lead nurture if we're not doing it for them, right? And I definitely want to talk about that. The ability to have a significant amount of sales appointments available, especially during prime times, and having a stout, consistent training process for the sales team at the gym, and also being able to value yourselves appropriately. If you're selling $150 gym memberships and that's your front end offer, like, you're gonna have a hell of a time seeing return on ad spend, just given the current state of marketing in the gym industry. Whereas if you have gyms that their average front end offer is $700, it's like, you don't need that many people, right, to break even, let alone see a 2, 3, 4x return.
Yeah, I think, again, it's a numbers game, right?
Yeah.
If you're selling $150 memberships, you're probably going to get a lot more people to buy, which feels good in the moment, versus a $700 front offer. But the $700 front end offer, they're probably going to stick around longer because they see the value in what you're doing. It's not something they're just going to, we'll give it a try.
Well, I want to dive a little bit further into this because I nerd out on this stuff. So in the case that you are someone who's a low barrier to entry offer, it's not that you can't be profitable. It's that it changes the dynamics of your sales process. So I'll give you an example. In the case that you do sell $150 gym memberships, you have to reconsider your offers. So if you're aiming for lower barrier to entry, this is where you can really utilize free trials, gift cards, or get paid to get fit, kind of like that's like the sidekick to like the free 6-week challenge. This is where you can actually really heavily leverage a lot of those things. But you have to be okay and comfortable with utilizing those offers. And if you're not, then you need to increase your prices and subsequently increase your value, because where you're going to want to aim is going to be something in the higher ticket realm. We'll say between like $600 and $1,200 for front end revenue for someone coming through the door. Now, what that does is it changes the emphasis of like, well, where are the challenges and likely constraints that are going to show up in this sales process? And where they're going to come up is in the fact that you're going to have to spend that much more time nurturing the leads because there isn't a free offer, right? There's no like super sticky, high attractive offer that you're utilizing to get someone to come in. So the way you're going to do it is by demonstrating value. It's by proof of concept. It's by establishing authority. So in the case that you are somebody that has higher value offers, you're going to have to be much more dialed with your content, right? Because you need to establish authority in your area, right? Like I think Hermosi said, I don't want to fuck this up because it's so good. He said, authority allows for lazy consumers. And what he means is that if you are an established authority in something, so think about like Charlie Munger. If he makes a video about finance, you don't have to have the part of your brain going that's questioning whether or not he knows what the hell he's talking about.
Right. You accept it as gospel.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you do want to sell like more expensive gym memberships and you do want people to pay you more when they come through the door, the burden falls in other areas of the business to prove that you're worthy of that amount of money, and then you're following up, you're having those conversations through the nurture, and then you're really buttoned up through your sales process, because it's just different problems. Do you see what I mean? Like between like low barrier entry versus like high barrier to entry. And I think for me, it's being as transparent as possible with gym owners so that they understand where they are on that spectrum, and then how that's going to influence where they need to put their time and energy. Yeah,
I think it's important to understand that there's no such thing as a problem-free marketing and sales process, right? There's problems regardless. your higher income clients, the $700,000, $1,200, $2,000 upfront offers, they're going to come with they're going to come with problems of, are you over delivering? Because they're not expecting you to give an average delivery of service. They're expecting an over delivery on everything you promised, because that's what they feel they're paying for.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as a marketing company. Very similar to how, and I'll make this analogy because it will resonate with coaches. Like the same way that there are like people out there that will claim that there's like a diet pill that works, right? And we all know that it doesn't. The marketing companies that claim that they're going to be able to come in and do everything for you and like it's going to be entirely hands off, you're not going to have to do a single thing or solve any problems or grow at all inside of the company or do any work fundamentally. It's setting people up for failure, because in the case that was true, they would just start the business themselves. Because if there's no friction beyond the point of marketing and it can just be a money-making machine, why would anyone in their right mind start that business? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's back to the old phrase, if it was so easy, everyone would do it.
Exactly. So, marketing, and this is why like I'm really, really big on positioning my business as I am not someone who's going to come in and save a dying business. I'm not, right? I'm there because I want to help businesses grow and scale their lead generation, lead nurture, and sales systems, right? And that's our target audience.
So your target audience is gyms that are plugging along but are ready to scale to the next level, not gyms that are a fart in the wind from closing up.
Well, I mean, just and there's a whole other slew of questions that I go through with owners, but if you think about the ones that I presented earlier, like just by knowing whether or not a gym is A, profitable, B, has a sales system in place, and C, has done any advertising in the past and has seen like even a decent amount of lead flow, I know whether they're going to be able to handle this or not.
Right. So they're an established, systemized company that just need the help with the volume and obviously that gap that seems to elude most gyms, or for me, it's really any business, that elusive commit to show.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, being a gym owner myself, I don't want to do a disservice to a gym and make promises that I can't keep. And when somebody lacks the resources and team to be able to effectively delegate responsibilities and build a sales team and be able to handle lead flow, it's not worth it. It's not in the cards. I think like you have to get to a point where you can grow big enough organically, because to me, that tells me your product is good, right? You have a good leadership structure. You have a team that's helping you, because in order to get to that point, the owner needs to be able to kind of step back and focus on more aspects of the business, which Two Brain has helped you and I out a ton with. And at that stage, it's like it's going to be really hard to continue. At a certain point, it's going to be really hard to continually grow at the rate you want to, purely with organic marketing and word of mouth and referrals. So this is where you can really leverage advertising.
Right, and for those that maybe don't understand the difference, that's what we're really getting at, is the difference between warm and hot leads, which is organic, second, third degree from you, right? So yeah. It's friends of clients, it's friends of staff, it's family, it's friends of yours. They have a general idea of who you are. Now you're stepping into the cold lead range that takes a lot more finesse and a lot more communication and trust building.
Well, right, because if you think about it this way, like if you work with Ben and he brings in his friend Sam, it's like you don't have to answer for the question of why the hell should I listen to you.
Right.
The answer is you made Ben really fucking fit.
Right. Ben and Sam probably had casual conversations on this multiple times over the last X amount of months.
Right. 80% of the sales process took place between Ben and his friend.
Right.
Whereas when you're dealing with colder leads, like you are, from the moment that they submit their information, you are answering the question of why the hell should I show up at your gym?
Yep.
And then that is compounded, right, with the fact that for most people, showing up at a gym is incredibly uncomfortable. So now you have somebody who doesn't know you, right, doesn't understand exactly what you do, doesn't know how you're going to help them, or if you're going to be able to help them. And then on top of that is already dealing with insecurities and shame around fitness and bad relationship with food. So it just makes it that much more important that the nurture process is dialed in.
I love it, man. I want to get back to kind of the balance of the CEO. I think that was a great explanation of the marketing side of the business. I think for any CEO, if you're struggling with marketing, definitely reach out to Derek, because it's, again, I am a big proponent that I think the biggest mistake that most people make is they go out and they get the leads, but they don't have a system in place to take them from a lead to setting an appointment. And the next gap is from setting the appointment to actually getting them to show.
Yeah, there's two quick things I want to address, and then we'll pivot. So the first thing is just because I said that, there's certain gyms that we wouldn't work with, it doesn't mean that you can't reach out to me. Like, even if you just want to hop on a call and jam, and there's anything that I can do to make you more comfortable and confident in your marketing strategy, I'm happy to jump on a call with you. I did want to mention the nurture piece, and the reason for it is that we talked about kind of the importance of it, and that's why we realized that we could get a gym a bazillion leads, but if they're not pounding the phones, much of that goes to waste. So we have now been injecting appointment setters directly into gym CRMs, and they are communicating with leads within 5-minute time spans. So time to lead is very fast. They are specifically trained on handling fitness objections, so they can get on the phones and talk the talk. They know everything about the inside and outside of these gyms, their services, their offerings, their coaches. So it's better than just going out and hiring a VA yourself, because you would have to train that VA and integrate them on your own. And in this case, like we're continuously training them and improving and optimizing the system.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this just astounding thing about you, that your alter ego is being an Eagles fan.
Oh, we're getting into it.
Let's talk about that. So the Eagles, why not the Raiders? I feel like that's like that should be the obvious choice for everyone.
I mean, listen, if you cut my arm, green's coming out, man. So
all right, respect.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is one of those things where 90% of people become fans based on proximity, and it just so happens to be the case for me. I was born 40 minutes outside of Philadelphia, and my dad was an Eagles fan. All my friends were Eagles fans. So from the time I was a little kid, man, it was just Eagles.
So you were bullied into the decision. I get it.
I think we're all bullied into the decision.
I don't know. My whole family was Niners fans, and I was like, nah, Raiders.
See, but that's like one of those things where it's like your dad can be an alcoholic, but you can go the other way, or you get caught in the same waters. I think fandom is kind of similar.
Or your whole family's a bunch of nerds, and you're like, I don't want to be a nerd.
It's okay. I'm glad. I'd rather you be an Oakland fan than a Niners fan.
Yeah, all day. No. So, you've got a lot of activities you do to decompress or recharge your batteries. One of them I wanted to kind of just briefly touch on is meditation, mindfulness, and breath work.
Yeah.
My ADD does not comprehend such things. So how does one go about doing that? Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the part one of this, I think it's important to say the reason for this is because, similar to fitness, I realized that my emotional health is heavily influenced by my ability to give myself moments of solitude.
Okay.
And I think that those things are tools to do it in a way that doesn't force me to just sit in a chair like an idiot staring at a wall. It's something to do.
It does work, sitting in a chair and staring at the wall.
It does, but being an entrepreneur, and speaking to the fact that you mentioned the ADHD, like it's not easy to do, and you end up just thinking about stuff anyway. So the breath work and the meditation kind of gives me a focal point. I'll speak to both. So the breath work is a way for me to help down-regulate. I'm a very upregulated person. I'm extroverted. I'm hyper. I'm energetic. Don't get me wrong, I crash at the end of the night, but like for the most part, from the moment I get up in the morning, like I'm very much like a bounce around kind of guy, which is great. But that also plays very heavily into like feeling anxious and overwhelmed and overrun. So I have to force down regulation on myself. And breath work is one of the best ways to do that, because you can do it virtually anywhere. So driving home from the gym, 5 minutes in between meetings in my office, right after lunch, what have you. So on the breathwork side of things, if you want to get tactical real quick, it's like I use box breathing, triangle breathing, being you breathe in for a certain amount of seconds, hold for a certain amount, exhale for a certain amount, and then hold for a certain amount. I've done like quite a bit of Wim Hof. That's a little bit more upregulation, but I do it. From a meditation practice standpoint, there's three things that I absolutely love. So one, and the name is going to escape me right now, non-judgmental. So it's like I'll go for walks, and the purpose is basically to like let your mind run and be as non-judgmental as you can be to your thought process as you're walking. And it's funny because your mind will go in the weirdest fucking places, but that I find to be very calming. The second way, which is probably my favorite way to do meditation, is around gratitude. And there is a name for this. It's not going to come to me, but the entire premise is basically you are thinking of 3 people that you're incredibly grateful for, right? And then you have kind of a saying that you kind of run through in your mind. For me, it's like, I hope you're at peace. I want you to be happy. I hope that you're finding something meaningful that you enjoy in life. And then you reflect it in the end, you reflect it back on yourself. And for me, I leave those sessions just feeling amazing. And then the final one is body scanning. So like laying down and being able to basically feel your feet. Okay, take a breath. All right, feel your shins. Take a breath. Feel your knees. Right, and like kind of running through. And that's just a really good way to kind of like bring me back in. You know what I mean?
Okay, so grounding, essentially, almost a form of grounding.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate that, man, and I appreciate everything you taught us today. I hope everybody learned. It's incredibly important to understand that, doing all these things, systemizing businesses, managing your personal life, being a parent, all of it takes work. It takes step-by-step process, and all of it requires systems. All of it requires consistent effort. All of it requires constant tweaking and auditing and changing as time goes on, and understanding, like you said, things can change in seasons, and understanding you might be in a season where fitness has to take a backseat to parenting and family and business, or vice versa. Maybe business is cruising and you don't want to grow it at the moment, and you want to put more time in your traveling and doing other things. Like other things can take the front seat.
Yeah.
But essentially, you just consistency wins, systems win, habits win, and like we've talked about in part 1, if you didn't watch part 1, make sure you go back and watch that. Derek's systems and priorities and the way he balances his 3 key pillars is different than mine. It's different than someone else. You have to find what works for you. What we're doing here is giving you examples and ideas and systems that we use to maintain that balance and not lose track of what's important so that we can have a successful life. And as always, keep digging.